Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
And welcome back to Inside West Virginia Politics. This Sunday, we're going to continue our discussion of the gun issues. We've heard from Senator Manchin. We want to get a Republican point of view. I want to introduce Delegate Jim Butler, Republican of Mason County, a member of the House of Delegates, who's also now running for the state Senate. We'll talk about that in a little bit. First of all, your thoughts. I mean, we've had, again, some mass shootings now across the United States over the last few weeks. You are one of approximately 30 Republicans in the House of Delegates that signed a letter saying we will not entertain any so-called red flag laws in the legislature. Why did you do that, and what is your concern about red flag laws?
Well, I did that, and I think most of us did that because every time there's some kind of a tragedy like this, there's a knee-jerk reaction to punish law-abiding citizens, and I think that's for those of us who represent small districts around the state. I represent Mason and Putnam counties. I see people at the store. They're concerned that we're going to do something to punish them, as I say, law-abiding citizens, for something that somebody who has possibly mental issues or some other issues going on.
You have also shared the concern with me that there's a worry about false reporting. If I have a quarrel with my neighbor and I don't like my neighbor and I go to the police and say this person is, mentally disturbed and they made threats, even though none of that may be true, you're concerned about them having their gun rights or their guns taken away. Well,
that is a serious concern. Of course, the right to keep and bear arms is a constitutional right, so I don't think you take that away lightly. And I also have done a little bit of research, and Maryland, for instance, has the red flag laws, and there have been instances there where people have had their weapons taken away, their firearms taken away, and then they have to hire attorneys and so forth to try to get them back, and it's a hardship on people. And again, this is an important right that is guaranteed by the Constitution.
You're right in the sense that people, when these mass tragedies happen, people look to the politicians of both parties and say, we need to do something. We've got to do something. What would you favor? Would it be, trying to deal with the mental health issues?
Well, that would be one of them. And actually, there's a procedure in West Virginia. We have mental health commissioners in every county. And there's a process where if someone thinks that there's someone who has mental issues and shouldn't have firearms, or maybe, other issues too that can't even take care of themselves, there's a process to have due process where they're represented by a court-appointed or a state-appointed attorney to represent them. So you have the whole due process thing, plus you have the treatment. So if they do find that they have a mental health issue, that there's treatment rather than just taking something away from them.
Let's talk about background checks. If I walk into a gun store today and want to buy a firearm, I have to go through a background check. But if I go on the internet and find somebody on Craigslist that wants to sell me a gun, or I go to a gun show, I don't have to do a background check. A lot of people want to close those loopholes and have background checks for all purchases.
Well, you're partially right there from my understanding. Now, if you're buying from someone on the internet that's out of state, where the weapon is crossing the states, you're supposed to go through this NCIS, they call it NICS system, which is the same thing that we all go through when we buy a firearm. And you remember, people are disqualified for having firearms if you have a domestic violence charge against you, if you have a felony against you, or a serious misdemeanor, if you're dishonorably discharged from the military. So there's a whole lot of things that already disqualify us from having weapons. So again, our efforts, I think, need to be to help people who need help, who maybe have a serious mental health issue, but also to protect people that they can keep their firearms if they're law-abiding citizens.
All right, well, we'll see what happens when the legislature returns and Congress goes back to Washington in terms of if anything happens with the gun issues. I want to talk politics, though, because you've pre-filed now to run for the state Senate seat in District 4, currently occupied by Senate President Mitch Carmichael, a fellow Republican. Why do you want to run for the state Senate?
Well, by the time this legislative session's over, I will have been in the House for 8 years, and I think I've done a good job of representing the people in Mason and Putnam counties. The Senate district is bigger, includes Roane and Jackson, and I have a lot of contacts there, and I think I would do well there. So it's time to move up, I think, and have a little bit bigger voice in the legislature.
Would you consider yourself more conservative than Mitch Carmichael, and are there votes he's made that have disappointed you as a Republican?
Yes, and I do want to say, though, when I was the first one to file, I believe, for this, I was kind of under the belief that Senator Carmichael might even run for something else. So So part of it was that I want to move up and have a bigger voice in the legislature, and I think I am more conservative. The voting record proves it.
Well, it's going to be one of the big races to watch in the primaries next year in May. We want to thank Delegate Jim Butler, Republican of Mason County, also represents part of Putnam County. Thanks for being with us today, Jim. We'll talk to you soon.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
We'll have more of Inside West Virginia Politics after this break. Stay with us.